The name Hurricane Ian will in fact be talked about for years and years to come. Not only that, but this name will also be a retired hurricane name. This means that you will never see it again on a list of names. Those 21 names we get every year, the name Ian will never be on those lists again. Over the years, specifically since 1954, we have accumulated a large list of names that have been retired, meaning these storms either caused a massive amount of damage, casualties, or any sort of record-breaking effects during a landfall. Not only will Hurricane Ian be added to this list, but we are going to focus on another storm back in 2004, Hurricane Charlie. There are some very interesting connections between that storm back in 2004 and Major Hurricane Ian, which took place 18 years and 46 days later. My friends, we are going to break this all down right here, right now. Let's go. Welcome back, everybody. It is October 1st, 2022, and as I record this video, thousands of Floridians are trying to pick up the pieces of their lives after the devastating landfall of Category 4 Hurricane Ian, making landfall in Cayo Costa, Florida on September 28th. This storm already being called the fourth largest hurricane to ever hit the state of Florida, just 10 miles per hour short of Hurricane Michael back in 2018, which was recategorized after the season ended from a Category 4 to a Category 5 hurricane. Now, in the coming months, don't be surprised if Hurricane Ian is also reclassified as a Category 5 after there is more time to analyze the data. If you remember, Hurricane Ian was at 155 miles per hour at one point, which is only 2 miles per hour away from being a Category 5. So we may see that change in the near future. Now, also on this list, you're going to notice just under Hurricane Ian, we have Hurricane Charlie back in 2004. And although there are drastic differences between these two storms, there are also some incredible similarities. Hurricane Charlie also made landfall in Cayo Costa, Florida as a 150 mile per hour Category 4 hurricane. So just try to process that information for a second and take a look at these hurricane paths. We have Charlie on the right from 2004 and then Ian over here on the left from just recently this past week. Now, what they meant by making landfall at the same time, it wasn't the same time of year because Charlie was in August, Ian was in September. They're talking about the time of day. Both of these hurricanes made landfall in Cayo Costa, Florida, the exact same landfall around the exact same time of day, that early afternoon, 11 p.m. to 1 p.m. time period. And not only that, but take a look at the previous track. As they led through the Caribbean, they both went directly under the Leeward and Lesser Antilles Islands, as you can see right here. They both went underneath Jamaica and then both clipped Western Cuba around the same exact spot, give or take about 50 miles. So that right there is very interesting. And then take a look at the path into Western Florida, that Cayo Costa area. I put the X here to mark that spot, and I also put it right here. We are talking about the same exact landfall location for the first landfall of these two storms, both making landfall at 150 miles per hour. Not only that, but take a look how they both crossed Florida back into the Atlantic Ocean. The paths they took are a little bit different, but still, the next incredible thing is that they both made a second landfall in the same exact spot of South Carolina. And in fact, I could show you here on Google Earth. I brought this up, the two Cayo Costa landfalls right here, directly on top of each other, the same exact location for both of these landfalls. And then I also marked what the data shows right now as the two separate landfalls in South Carolina. Now, this line you see here goes from Myrtle Beach down to just south of Georgetown. It's about a 30-mile difference. Now, both of these hurricanes did in fact hit Myrtle Beach, but what happened before that is pretty incredible. You could see here, Hurricane Ian made landfall, again, just south of Georgetown, and then went across this small part of the ocean that kind of in-dips here to the west, then hitting just north of Myrtle Beach. That is exactly where Charlie hit on its second landfall. So if you really think about this, we have something pretty incredible that took place. Again, there are drastic differences between these storms. Hurricane Ian was much bigger than Hurricane Charlie, as you could see. These maps are to scale. They are zoomed in exactly the same, and you could see just the sheer difference of Ian's mass compared to Charlie. So that is something something to take note of, but the fact that they both hit Cayo Costa, Florida after a very similar path across the Atlantic Ocean, both causing catastrophic damage with those initial Category 4 strength landfalls. Now, of course, we have common paths to which hurricanes travel based on the Bermuda Atlantic bubble that can steer these storms by either pinching them to the south and keeping them low, just like what happened with both of these hurricanes. But then you got to take into account the jet stream, which then controls whether or not these storms turn north and at what point they do so. So not only was our jet stream over a few day period the exact same as it was back in 2004, but the Bermuda Atlantic bubble pressure, the big high pressure bubble that sits in the Atlantic, also had to have been in almost the exact same formation. Now, if you follow hurricanes and the tracks of hurricanes, that is an incredible thing on its own. But then to see two landfalls taking place in basically the exact same spots, this is something that's going to be studied and looked at pretty much till the end of time. Again, Hurricane Charlie took place August 9th to August 15th of 2004, made landfall at 150 miles per hour, just like Ian did. Here is a radar loop of Hurricane Charlie as it crossed over western Cuba, just like Ian, and then approaches western Florida, and then turns right into Cayo Costa, Florida, crossing right over into the Atlantic once again. And if we jump over here to Hurricane Ian's current Wikipedia page, this area of the page is going to have a lot more detail in the coming weeks and months. This includes an estimated amount of damage in dollars. This will talk about casualties. I'm sure the number is much higher than what Charlie caused. I think Charlie was in the 20s, maybe 30s. Which is horrible in itself, but we still are in the middle of rescue efforts for Hurricane Ian. But it will still be interesting to see the stats and see if they have any similarities based on the two basically mirrored paths they took from the beginning of their lifespan to the end. As we stated earlier, Hurricane Ian is now the fourth strongest storm to ever hit Florida in basic recorded history. Now, Charlie was in that spot at number 4, so it's very interesting and even more of a weird coincidence that these two are now back-to-back on the list of strongest storms to hit Florida, both at 150 miles per hour, just 1 millibar away from each other. Ian being at 940 at landfall, a bit stronger, and Charlie being at 941. One other thing I wanted to go over with you guys, which I thought you might find interesting, is the top strongest hurricane to ever hit Florida. Now, back in 1935, there was a major, this is the biggest hurricane to ever hit. It was called the Labor Day Hurricane. 1935, 185 miles per hour. The second on this list, as I'm sure many of you have heard of, was Hurricane Andrew in 1992. 165 miles per hour at landfall, a Category 5, one of only 4 Category 5s to ever hit the United States, period. At number 3, we have 2018's Hurricane Michael, which was again upgraded from a Category 4 to a Category 5 a few months after the actual hurricane itself. The data was reanalyzed, and it was then noted that the 160 mile per hour winds, sustained winds, that's for over 1 minute, were estimated to be about 4 miles per hour faster than originally thought, which is why it went from a Category 4 to the 160 mile per hour Category 5. And then, of course, we have 2004's Hurricane Charlie, 150 mile per hour winds at landfall, August 13th of 2004, a terrible hurricane. In fact, there are still areas of Florida that were never rebuilt on since that 2004 hurricane. And remember, this was the 4th position, so now Charlie is number 5 and Ian sits actually at this number 4 spot. My friends, it's going to be a long and tough road for Western Florida and a lot of Florida as a whole. Not only dealing with the physical effects of this storm, but the mental effects. Are people going to want to rebuild or relive their lives in these parts of Florida, knowing that these devastating hurricanes are very possible? Basically, up until Hurricane Fiona and then Ian, we have had a pretty quiet hurricane season. It was projected to be a lot stronger and busier than this, but by the looks of it, it just seems that the hurricane season started late. There are still storms on the horizon that we can track right now. I will be making videos about those as well as they begin to form, and all we can really do is keep our thoughts on Florida right now and seriously just hope for the best. I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch this video. Shout out to Canada and Florida. I will be back. Any questions or concerns or additional data you might have, please leave down below. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. Stop right there, my friends. If you have not already, click that subscribe button and don't forget to hit the bell icon. Click all and you will get all notifications from this channel. And trust me, you won't be disappointed.